All right, guys, so I have all of the panels home finally. Very exciting. They're quite large. I think they're going to take up more space in the room than I had anticipated. I hope it doesn't feel too claustrophobic, but of course, you got to put the sound first. So these are the corners. They take up the most room. This pretty much filled the back of a U-Haul truck today. Sorry, a U-Haul cube van, but pretty much it was full. So um, 20 bucks and some gas costs, not bad. I recommend it if you don't have a pickup truck or something like me. I have a small car, so I had to pick these up at the shop where they were made and get them home. So there's all the corners, 8 of them because there's 2 per stack to fill the corners floor to ceiling. They're custom measured for my ceilings so that you don't have any gaps. Here's 3 broadband panels even. Those are pretty big. They are probably close to 4 inches thick. And this one here is the base trap, so it's even thicker, maybe 6 or 7, about 6 inches for that. That'll go on the back wall. And over here we've got the other 3 broadband panels, so there'll be 4 on the walls, 2 and 2 on either side, and then on the ceilings there will be 2 in the cloud position above the listening position. So those stacks, we'll put the corners in first. I think that's easiest. You don't really need any tools or mounting hardware. They can just sit there. This one will be full height. That side, because of this bulkhead, it's going to be a bit shorter. Same thing, of course, back here for the rear corner. But it is important to do all 4 corners, and I'm glad that I decided to do that and go with custom sized columns made by a local musician who also is something of a studio, an acoustic design guru. It's actually the sound guy from the club Coda. So trusting him with this project, and he did a nice job building out these panels for me. So without further ado, let's install some corners. Welcome guys to my new and almost nearly completed studio. As you can see, the panels are up on the walls now and on the ceiling. They're looking good, they're sounding good, and I'm sure you're wondering how much of a difference do they make, and we're going to get right into that in just a minute. So the studio is about 95% complete now. All I'm missing is a permanent chair and desk. I've been hunting around for quite a while for these, having trouble finding something that I like, but I am working on it and hope to put that finishing touch into the studio soon. I'm also going to do a video about my research process, which I spent a month or 2 looking and talking to people about the different types of insulation that you can put inside of these acoustic panels. The reason I did that was that I learned that some of the materials people are using, like fiberglass and mineral wool, can actually pose some respiratory health dangers. And I'm going to be spending, hopefully, a lot of time in this room, so I didn't want to mess around with anything like that. So I will do a video in more detail about the different types of health risks and different materials that are out there that you can use to build your panels. I didn't build these panels myself, but I did go and source and pick up the insulation material myself. And then I had a local carpenter who's also an audio engineer. In fact, he's the sound guy from Coda nightclub. He built these panels for me at a fraction of the cost of what it would have cost to get them built by the other company I was looking into, GIK Acoustic, out of the States, because by the time you factor in shipping on these things plus customs, I was going to spend an extra $600 or $700 just to get these things here. So these panels cost about $1,500 for the labor and materials, although the insulation I bought myself, it was only about $100. So for $1,600, I got a complete set made, and they're floor to ceiling custom height measured in the corners, which is another thing you don't get if you buy a prefab set from a company like Prime Acoustic or GIK. So the material that I chose to put inside is a manufacturer called Knauf, Knauf, and this product is called Earth Wool. It's kind of a synthetic blend that does have some fiberglass in it, but also some other type of technologies, which I'll get into in more detail when I do the video about the respiratory health issue. So for now, you're thinking, how much do these panels actually work? Let's listen and see for ourselves. So what I did to compare this and prepare this test was I took 3 different microphones and I took readings with them of different sounds in the room before I installed any of the panels. So I've used 3 different mics, like I say. The first was the Audio-Technica 4040. That's the mic I use for my vocals and for my podcast. Second mic that I use is actually a studio reference microphone, which is an instrument that's specifically designed for taking readings in a studio and for studio design purposes. So it's basically tuned to be completely neutral and flat. And then thirdly, I used a lapel microphone, which is actually hiding under my shirt right now. It's a lav aperture. It's about only $60, but it's pretty decent sound as it goes for entry or medium kind of grade lapel microphones. So without further ado, let's take a listen and see what the room can do. Check, 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 check 1, 2, check, check. Sound test from Ableton with a beat, no panels. No panels, close to the wall. Check, check, check 1, 2. All right, we got a guitar here. It's still the AT4040 mic. No panels up in the room. And the mic is in the center listening position. I'm going to turn off all the reverb. Okay, no more reverb on the amp. Okay, now what we've got here is a studio reference microphone that's calibrated to be completely neutral. Okay, now we've got the reference mic in the listening position now. And the guitar with no reverb. Okay, and last but not least, we've just got a little lapel mic here. It's from ALAV. It's the ALAV aperture going into a Zoom H1 recorder. We'll take some measurements around the room with that as well. Okay, so this is at the listening position. Okay guys, so there you have it. A pretty dramatic sounding difference. Definitely things sound a bit more, deadened, punchy, definitely less reverb, all things that you would expect. And so I'm pretty happy with those results. The other thing we can do though is go have a look on the computer at the actual graphical representation of the before and after, which I did in the program SonarWorks. So let's have a look at that and see what the graphs show. So here's the analysis of the room before any of the panels went in. And a couple interesting things to note here. The first is that around the 100 hertz mark and up to maybe 120 hertz and over to maybe sort of 90 on the left here is you have a variance from 0 dB at -6. That continues over here in the highs as well. So It's kind of problematic on the extreme both sides of the spectrum, although 80 hertz or 90 hertz isn't even that low for bass. Sometimes you're going for some really nice low subtones, as low as, 50 or 40 in some tracks. So over here, it's even a bit more dramatic. It dips down to minus maybe 7 or 8. And the other thing, of course, to pay attention to is the top, where you have a couple of peaks as opposed to valleys that go up as high as over here, plus maybe 8 or plus 9. And that's kind of around, I guess, 500 or 600 hertz. And then you look at the left-right. So the dark blue line is the left monitor, and the light blue line over here, hopefully you can see my cursor, is the right speaker. So these two lines, if you follow them through, are not terribly in sync through a very important part of the frequency spectrum, around 120 hertz over here, where a lot of important mid-range sounds live, sounds that really fill up your song, synthesizers, other instruments, and melodies. So that's certainly problematic. You also get some peaks on the left speaker over here and up here as well. And just generally, if you read this through across from about 80 hertz over here and then upwards, the two lines are kind of out of sync quite a bit. They don't really overlap or match up that well. And that tells us that there's a phasing problem or a left-right problem in the room. So let's contrast that now with the analysis that was done after the panels went in, which is here. Just blow this up for you. So over here, the first thing you'll notice is that the left-right, with a couple exceptions, are a lot better in sync. But there's still some problem areas, notably around 120, 130, maybe that's even closer to 150. This region here is a big gap. But then, through a lot of the midway of the frequency spectrum, you can see here the lines are a lot more in sync. So the panels seem to have helped take away some phasing and keep those lines much closer to one another all the way until around 1100 hertz over here. And then after that problem, once again, they're pretty nicely in sync all the way into the extremely high end of the frequencies, which would be really high sounds like maybe hi-hats, crash cymbals, that kind of thing. So, and then the bass is looking pretty tight over here until it drops away where the response is not available because the bass is too low. But over here around 50 to 100 hertz, this is looking tight. And then the other thing you'll notice is that in terms of up down, the variance on the frequency, on the gain rather, on the decibel is closer, generally a bit closer to the 0 mark. So we went from about -6 down here to mostly around more like -3 for these valleys over here. So that's almost a 100% improvement to go from -6 dB to -3. There's still an outlier over here around 1100 hertz where actually strangely just the left side dips way down still to like -7. So there's a problem there I've got to work on. And then in terms of the peaks, again, generally a little bit lower, a little bit closer to 0, around 4 to 6 dB, that range, a bit of a bump here, but generally looking well under the kind of 4 or 3 plus dB around over on the higher end of the frequency spectrum over here. And other than this peak here, a bit on the lower side as well, things were a little bit tighter, a little bit cleaner. So this is a first work on the studio, first set of panels. Might be a few other problem areas that I can tweak. There is that bulkhead on the left side of the room, could be responsible for some of this left-right imbalance. So maybe there's something I can do on the bulkhead to pad part of the sort of inner wall of it, and that could maybe help to get rid of some of this left-right problem. But overall, this does look like a pretty big improvement. Okay, so there you go, guys. A bit about my journey in getting these panels created, mounted, and testing them out. I hope that's been interesting and informative. If any of you are in the process of building your own studio, you have any questions about acoustic panels, please just comment below with your question, and I'll do my best to get back to you as soon as possible. All right, thanks for watching. I'll look forward to seeing you back here next video.